welcome to Gnostic Warrior Radio from GnosticWarrior.com, broadcasting from San Diego, California, around the world. Today we have ex-Navy SEAL Michael Jaco with MichaelJaco.com. The Intuitive Warrior is a book that he had written recently that goes over the warrior aspects of being a Navy SEAL and the spiritual aspects as well. And we're going to talk about that today, and also his time as a Navy SEAL. How you doing today, Michael?
I'm doing great, Mo. Thanks a lot.
Great. And your website, MichaelJaco.com, is that where everybody could find you after this interview?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And your book, Intuitive Warrior, that's a book I had got from you. Geez, it was a couple of years ago when I had met with you at a convention in Sedona, Arizona.
Right.
And it really, I brought it home and I devoured it within 3 days. It was probably it's one of the top 3 books that I own, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thanks.
Yeah, it really helped me understand kind of the feelings that I had inside, intuitively, as far as the intuitive side. The warrior side is a complete different aspect, and just so you guys know out there, the audience, my website, GnosticWarrior.com, one of my inspirations for the warrior aspect of that was Michael Jaco and the Intuitive Warrior, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But I wanted you to kind of go over a little bit about, before we get into the intuitive part, the science of it, what it was like being a Navy SEAL. Your time, you were 24 years in the Navy SEALs, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. 24 years. It was a fantastic moment in my life by far. It was something that when I was probably 4 or 5 years old, it's something that I wanted to do. So up until I was 18 years old, when I was finally able to enlist in the Navy, that's all I wouldn't say that's all I thought about, but I thought about that quite often. Any book that I could get hold of and devour. The very first thing that I remember was seeing this one movie, Frogmen, and it was an old movie, somewhere around I think it might have actually been made during World War II, and it kind of depicted the life of a frogman, the precursor of the Navy SEALs. So that got me hooked, because I was always a fish in the water. I just loved to swim, and that was doing everything exciting that I thought. So that's what I wanted to do early on. Once I finally did it, it was beyond all my expectations, all my dreams, and met some fabulous people, did amazing things while I was in the SEAL teams, had some great experiences, and that was one of the things that opened me up to this intuitive ability. So I have a lot of fond memories of being a SEAL.
Yeah, and if you look at, your explanation of what got you interested in the Navy SEALs with the frogmen, it's almost like you had that intuitive ability as a child because you were attracted to it. Do you believe that now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think that we come into our lifetimes with pretty much a set plan, and that was definitely something that got my interest right away early on in life. So, yeah, I think that was definitely something I had programmed into my soul path, so to speak.
Yeah, and for an outsider looking at the Navy SEALs, and what you guys do and have to go through, I've seen the videos and the movies and read your book. When I imagine myself doing that, it's just completely incomprehensible to me, and it really puts you guys almost in this Superman status, And when I look at it, it's almost like you have this something within. It's not only that you, of course, physically, the training and everything you have to do, but there's something within you guys that just makes you guys go further and further than the average person.
That's great insight, and that's true. But it's not just a certain few people that have that ability within them. I think that from my experiences as a Navy SEAL and as a BUD/S instructor, that I saw that within everyone, and I've seen that in everyone throughout my life. Everyone has that spark of creativity, that spark of divinity within them. And if you really have an extreme desire for something, you can manifest that in your life. And that was one of the things that I had, and one of the things I noticed that the guys that were successful had when they came into the BUD/S program. And BUD/S is the Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training. So I was fortunate pretty much a little over halfway through my career, about the 12-year mark, when I went to BUD/S. And I was the first phase instructor, and I was the phase chief for quite some time before I started the hand-in-hand program, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. But the buds basically it took a lot just to get there. You had to enlist in the Navy, go through basic training for being in the Navy, boot camp, and then from there you had to at the time it's a lot easier to get into the SEAL teams now because you can pre-plan this and they'll give you like a fast track. So you go after boot camp, you go straight to SEAL training. But when I came in, it wasn't that easy. You usually went to the fleet for a certain period of time, for a year or so, and that was my path. So I chose to be a hardhead diver, which was a specialty within the Navy at the time as well. There's been a lot
when you say the fleet, that's to the boats. Is that what that means? Or
yeah, that's the basic thing that you
okay.
do when you come into any kind of service.
So you have to spend a year on the boat,
right.
Basically. Is that kind of okay?
It doesn't necessarily have to be a boat. It can. I mean, you could be an administrative person.
Okay, gotcha.
Too. So you're just serving time within the Navy and some kind of specialty. I was fortunate. I could have gone into anything, and that's one of the things that you go through. You have to go through what's called an ASVAB test, and the ASVAB test determines your ability as in the mental capacities. They have arithmetic and verbals and writing and stuff like that. So you're graded on that, and I scored very highly on that. So I could have gone into anything that I wanted to. The very top thing that they were trying to push at the time was nuclear. And they said, we can make you a nuke, and you can get like all this money for becoming a nuclear, sailor. And I was like, no, I really want to be a SEAL. So they, got me on that program. It was great.
That was in the 80s, or?
That was in 78 is when I enlisted.
Oh, wow.
1978 is when I first came in.
Okay, so that was right at the time before Reagan and all the Soviet Union and the wall came down and so forth.
Absolutely, yeah. So
wow.
It was actually a very I would say if there's you could say a downtime for the military, that was a very downtime because after the Vietnam War, a lot of downsizing usually happens after a major war. Happened after World War II, after World War I. Every major war they have downsizing. So it was a downsizing period. So and the civilian population as a whole at the time didn't have a very good opinion of the military. So, especially in California where I ended up, so it was kind of challenging in some of these places to go and be in the military. So,
did you understand that going in? I mean, you had dreamed about it since a child. So, did you understand that when you came out here to California that there was kind of this ill will towards the military in Vietnam and so forth?
Oh yeah, but I'm. When you have a dream, yeah, and you're young and dumb, so to speak. You're going to go and do what you're going to do, and I just work through it. I mean, people are who they are, and most people once they found out who I really was as a person, they were always good to me. So it was the same thing for being in the military. And it's funny at the time, very very few people knew anything about Navy SEALs or UDT or any underwater demolition teams. I remember going to restaurants, and we usually keep things very silent about, being a Navy SEAL, and we wouldn't tell anybody. But one of the guys I was with decided he would just throw it out there because no one knows what we do or who we are. So the waitress asked us, she thought we were with the San Diego Chargers, the football team, because we're all very physically fit. She's like, are you guys with the Chargers? And we're like, no, we're Navy SEALs. And she paused for a little bit, and she goes, oh, you train SEALs? And we're like, we train SEALs. She thought we were for SeaWorld.
Wow. And yeah, now, I mean, when people think of the ultimate warriors in military, it's Navy SEAL usually. And that's no disrespect to any of the other military outfits out there, but, as an outsider and the marketing and everything that happened after, you were part of SEAL Team 5 and then, of course, the infamous SEAL Team 6, correct?
Yeah, I was actually with a lot of SEAL teams. I came in, I was with UDT 11, UDT 12, and then eventually I went on to SEAL Team 5, and then from SEAL Team 5 to SEAL Team 6. And so I like to get around. I like to experience a lot of different teams. There's a lot of professionals out there, and I just wanted to work with the best. And SEAL Team 6 at the time was considered the best, and it really was. It still is.
And each team has a specific specialty?
Usually, it's kind of diversified within all the teams now. They've kind of changed the profile, but at the time that I was in, it was usually very specific for a SEAL team to have a different area of operation. For instance, SEAL Team 5 was very focused on. We would go to Australia, Thailand, the Philippines is where we were based out of at the time, and SEAL Team 1, which was the other team, kind of focused on some other areas. The UDTs, which kind of were on the boats, floated around. They were basically doing the marine landings. They would go in and reconnaissance the beach and make sure there are no obstacles. And then the Marines would come in and land. So it was, I did that the first part of my career, and it was very exciting, very fulfilling.
And the different teams wouldn't know what the other team was doing most of the time. I understand, correct?
No, there was a camaraderie between the teams. There's a little bit of rivalry, of course, which goes with any special group. One group wants to think that they're the best, so they try and prove that to the other team, and so there's a little bit of a rivalry. It's good natured most of the time, though. SEAL Team 6, of course, was anti-terrorist team, so they could travel anywhere in the world, and that's what we trained for, to at a moment's notice. And we were usually on we were always on a one hour recall when we're on what's called standby, and we could deploy within 4 hours after we were recalled into the base.
And that brings me to my next question. You guys were a counter-terrorist team, correct? SEAL Team 6, and this was the military team that killed Osama bin Laden. Were you a part of this?
That was my former team. It's very interesting because each of there's different teams within SEAL Team 6. There's colored teams, and my particular team was a red team, and red team was supposedly, I'm saying supposedly, so there's deniability, of course, but red team was my former team. So I have kind of like a connection with them, and I feel a great rapport with them, and it's very rewarding to know that they were part of that mission. So that was great. There were aspects that I was involved in, but that's some things that I have a non-disclosure that I can't talk about certain things. So that's of course one of them. So but yeah, there was some involvement.
Do you guys change, this isn't part of the questions I originally wanted to ask you, but do you change missions, or say you were operating SEAL Team 6 or whatever was operating on counter-terrorist missions in the Middle East? Do they change locations, or will they always focus, say, on the Middle East or the Philippines, SEAL Team 5 or whatever?
Right. Well, SEAL Team 6, like we said, they'll go anywhere in the world, but right now, with combat operations, they're focused on where the most intense combat is. So they're in Afghanistan and places like that, where there's a lot of combat action. That's where our focus is right now. So they're actually getting a lot of combat work, so to speak, and they're extremely highly trained, so they're perfect for that mission, for those missions. There are SEAL teams. Usually, it's going to be the East Coast SEAL teams. That's their area of operation. So the SEAL teams, SEAL Team 2, SEAL Team 4, those teams are going to be working more directly in that area of operations. But occasionally, some of the other teams, will come in and help out the team. So SEAL Team 5, I think, is involved over there. Well, SEAL Team 5 is definitely involved over there. SEAL Team 3. So a lot of the teams, when there's combat, they're going to be inserting people into those areas.
And you guys were sometimes referred to as the A team, and I had also found a curious quote as the Jedi Knights as well. And I don't know if that was something that came internally or something that was kind of branded from the media and other people. And of course, when I see stuff like that, I know Michael Jaco. From meeting him, and he's a mentor to me on via email, and then reading his book, is that he's highly involved in the intuition and the spiritual part of that. So do you have a process in that?
Yeah, that's very interesting. You bring that up. The Jedi Knights, so to speak. That's something that there's always we come up with these little terms for what we do. Jedi Knights would be something that would be very very deep. On the like a spiritual, intuitive level, and that was something that was very pronounced within the SEAL teams. It's not something that's, out in the open. There's a little undercurrent of it. There's people like myself that were actually trained in some areas that enhanced our intuitive abilities. I became a remote viewer. I could do a lot of different things that were, we think of not of the ordinary, but for us it was something that was totally accepted, something we could do.
So your superiors had noticed this early on with you and your abilities with intuition, and they had developed programs to help enhance it possibly with you, and then maybe implement it in small phases into the Navy SEALs with the people that had those similar abilities. Is that what I'm gathering?
Yeah, there were special programs that some guys would go to. Most of the stuff that I learned was on my own. You can notice throughout and I talk about this in my book. You notice throughout the years that some guys had certain abilities. Some, like the Vietnam vets, especially. Anytime you're in a combat situation where your life is in danger, it definitely will heighten your senses. So these guys had the ability to know when ambushes were going to happen in training operations. So they'd already developed all this stuff, and I was just absolutely amazed by this. And I realized that, if these guys could do it, I could too. It's kind of like the same thing when you go through SEAL training. You look at the instructors and you go, well, these guys did it, I can do it too. Even though you put these guys on a pedestal, you still know they're human beings, and we all have these inherent abilities. So once you get it into your mind that you can possibly do these things and you want to focus on them, usually that's when the teacher or the ability starts to arrive. And once you focus on it and learn to develop it, it's kind of like a muscle. Then it's part of your character, part of your abilities from that point on. So yeah, there were guys that had abilities, and there were programs that guys went to learn these skills at a higher level.
When you say that muscle, I've been studying, different things lately as far as the chemical makeup and the chemical energy aspect of man, and when you see the Jedi Knights, it makes you think of Star Wars and May the Force be with you, and Albert Einstein, everything is energy, and that's all there is to it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. There's the Jedi actually goes back to Egypt. The Jedi knights, they were actual knights back in Egyptian times, and if we get into the subject of past lives, in a past life, I was one of those Jedi Knights. So it's interesting that these abilities come through in future lives as well.
Yeah, and that's where I was gathering that you had mentioned everything is kind of within us as far as that spark, which I totally agree. But where I see it's different, because I also believe in reincarnation and past lives, and we kind of continue on the teachings, and we're to gather knowledge in this life to evolve as a soul. So we go to the next life and we take those teachings. So I look at that aspect as a lot of us had kind of different roles, where, maybe I don't have that warrior aspect, but maybe I haven't done the past life regressions like I know you have, and we'll get into that later. Okay. But it's almost like you were born that way, even though I know that spark is within us, and we all could be great, and we all have that divine intuitive intuition that you have that we all could develop. But my thoughts are not everybody could be a Navy SEAL. Is that correct? Or
yeah, I mean, it's proven throughout history. There's
yeah, exactly. How many people pass the Navy SEAL test?
Right, there's usually 70% attrition rate on the average, but sometimes a little bit less, sometimes more. When I was there was one class that was had I think over a 90% attrition rate, and there was one that had actually the class that I proctored, so I was like their mentor in first phase. They had an extremely high success rate. So I mean, it varies. It can happen to anybody, like I said, but you have to have an extreme level of desire, and of course, unfortunately, there are injuries that happen as well. And I think the injuries that happen, I remember talking to one of the guys that I was proctoring for in this one class. He came to me, he was pretty torn up. He had tears in his eyes. It was something he always wanted to do his whole life, and here he is. He's got these shin splints, or so he's self-diagnosing himself with shin splints. And I told him my story, how I had started having. I think everybody has pains and aches and stuff, going through SEAL training, obviously. because you're pushing yourself 10 times beyond what the normal human can do on any given day. So he was telling me this story, and I told him, look, I had the same problem, and what I did is I had a burning desire that the only way that I was going to quit is if I died, that kind of dedication. And I told him that I thought that because of that focus and that burning desire, that I might have self-healed myself. And looking back on my life, that I found that is correct. If you really have a burning desire, it activates certain things within your brain. And these activations within your brain, these alpha states that I talk about in the book, can actually lead to healing. And in fact, they do lead to healing. The people that are very, joyful, have, very good focus, are happy in their lives, they're the ones usually never get sick. And there's reason for that, because they're not in these lower states of consciousness. So these higher states of consciousness are not only great for, manifesting what you want in life, but they're also very important to keep your health and your well-being.
And I want to attest to that, Michael. I'm a 20-year sufferer of hepatitis C, which I had contracted when I was about 19, 20.
Wow.
Don't really know when, but I started, I got a test to get life insurance for my family, and I didn't even know I had it. This was a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was feeling pretty good, for the most part. I just felt like an average, 39-year-old at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Healthy guy.
I going to get a nice policy for my family just in case something happens,
Sure.
because, I'm the primary breadwinner. So, yeah, I get denied, and it comes back positive for Hep C.
Wow.
And I just went into a depression kind of mode of woe is me.
Sure.
And I really started feeling terrible. I mean, I went from feeling like an average 39-year-old that went through the stuff that I went through to I literally felt like I was 70 and I was going to die in a couple of years.
Wow, yeah.
And I realized at the time, and you made me think of different things, and the feeling of love and happiness and how it changes you. And I started realizing that I was defeating myself already by the way I was thinking. And I started changing my thoughts, and like you'd said, that higher state of consciousness. And, when you start thinking negative, you got to immediately, get that out of your head and think positive, because those things poison you. And I really believe that it poisons you and kills you. And there's people that come back from these diseases, such as HEP, that could live long lives and have cancer if they change the way they think and their emotions, correct?
That's absolutely, that's a beautiful story. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, and it happened for this guy too that I was talking about. Fortunately he took my advice, and he stayed focused on his training. He thought he was going to be out of training. He made it all the way through training. He was an enlisted guy, became an officer, and came back to me and said that later in life, these are the things that really, impact you and make you feel good for, what you're giving to the community and to others. He actually came back to me many, many years later and told me that was a turning point in his life and thanked me for it. So it was cool.
And basically your theory is that someone could have that all the time, and you talk about that in your book. During the BUDS training and the Hell Week, there was it really caught my eye and touched me, is that Native American.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, can you tell us about that story, please?
Yeah, that's a great story. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, this Native American, I went through BUDS training or Hell Week, and I put hundreds of people through Hell Week, and you get torn up. I mean, you're down, you're dragging your body around. This Native American kid, when I saw him, it was I had the day shift, and there was like 3 different shifts. There was 8 hours for each shift. Normally, I worked the night shift, but this particular week, I was working the day shift. And so I saw this Native American kid, and I called some of the other instructors over, and I said, is this kid, was he taken out of training, just put back in? And they're like, no, he's been with it the whole time. So I called him over, and I talked to him. And he was telling me how his grandfather had taken him on Vision Quest as a young boy. And all the stuff that he had taught him, how to focus his intent and how to focus his energy, he was doing in this Hell Week. It had been a great experience for him. I was like, kind of thinking in the back of my mind, yeah, that's really bullshit, And so I said, okay, go back. So I started watching him. I thought that maybe the other trainees within the class were, giving him a little extra help, so he wasn't really putting out. So I watched him, and he was actually doing more than his boat crew because these guys are like zombies, and he was like fresh. So I was like, wow, this is impressive. I'm interested in this. So they had a little experience where they actually wrote. We do this. I mean, everyone goes through this. Is kind of trying to train because you're so broke down physically on the fourth day as a Thursday afternoon. We bring them into the classroom. We start playing this classical music, and we tell them not to fall asleep and write a letter to someone important in their life, their mother, their grandfather, whoever. I remember writing this, and I had these flash naps, as they're called, and I caught myself waking up, and I didn't realize I was doing it. And there'd be scribble on the paper and drool and stuff like that. And
you go from training hardcore to go listen to classical music.
Exactly. So it's kind of it's training them to learn how to oh yeah, you can handle yourself physically, but you have to be able to also think. So it was one of those things that we do throughout, and from that point on, it's something that gets integrated more and more and more. But it was kind of like a first lesson in that, and I failed miserably. Of course, fortunately, we were told if we went to sleep, we'd go out and hit the surf zone, which is freezing cold, and you're already wet and sandy, and you don't like the water anymore this time. So you're trying to keep yourself awake. But this kid, I watched him. He wrote, I mean, flowingly. I mean, just was going off on the paper, and I was like, wow, I am going to read his notes. Absolutely. So I read his thing, and it was very articulate, very well written. He talked about how he had done, like I said, done these vision quests and went into depth about it. And I was like, well, someday I've got to do one of those. And eventually I did. And it was life-changing for me too. So these different states of mind, learning how to go in them was something that I went into even deeper when I started the hand-to-hand program. And we can talk about that when we get a chance.
Yeah, definitely. I have some questions there on that. I wanted to kind of get over the SEAL team questions, okay, and then get more into the, and I have some government and military questions that I think people out there would be interested.
Sure.
That stuff that you could share with me, of course. The Navy SEALs, they've been somewhat vocal. They're always, it seems like out of all the different military groups out there, they're like the ones that are allowed to, not I'd say allowed, but they seem to speak their mind, and they're not scared to say what they want about the government or, say, Obama's policies. And as an outsider, it's a bit peculiar. Does the commander-in-chief and his top military teams, do they get along, or can you comment on that?
Sure, I can comment on that. Going back to the how the SEALs can be outspoken like that, it's the same. It was during the time frame where I was actually a BUDS instructor, the phase chief, and they had decided to do some. It was a political decision from the high ranks of our community, because we had never let anybody come in and see our Hell Week or even talk to us about anything about training. We're very secretive about our training and our what we did. But they thought it would be politically expedient because of funding, and also for recruiting, if we opened ourselves up to kind of like sensationalize ourselves, so to speak. So we had this one guy. It was Doug Waller. He was a writer. He came in, and I was with Doug quite a bit, and I talked to him. There's actually a book that he put out. I can't think of the name right off the top of my head, but if it comes to me, I'll bring back up. But it was basically a book about special forces, and he talked about the SEAL teams, and I talked to him quite a bit. So we were starting to open it up so that the public could see what we had, and that was one of the first things. This was back in the late 90s that this was happening. From that point on, we opened it up more. So we have all the Navy SEAL movies and so forth. So everyone knows a lot about the SEAL teams now. Of course, you'll never find out the deeper truths, but that's the way it is. You can't. But what happens with SEALs, we have a very open-minded community. So these abilities that I was able to develop, of course, they weren't out in the open. Even a lot of Navy SEALs won't admit that we do this stuff or even vocalize it. Some guys just deny it; they don't believe in it. But there are a group of guys that can do these skills, and they get to develop them. So this open-minded attitude is not common in all the other services. There's extreme professionals. I loved working with our Army counterparts in Delta. Extreme professionals, in their own right, in their own respect, they perform as well, if not better, in some aspects than we do. But I think the open-mindedness that we have is the key that makes the SEALs just a little bit different, so to speak. So that ability to be open-minded also leads to being open-mouthed. So you'll have some guys being outspoken, and it's used. We're used to that. Of course, there's a time and place where that's not allowed, and some of these guys that have been outspoken for some things, especially for the for the actions that were happening with Osama bin Laden, have basically been reprimanded. So, like I said, you sign an agreement of non-disclosure, and you can be prosecuted if you go outside those bounds. Those bounds are a little gray, so they can if they feel like you're pushing the envelope a little bit, they can kind of yank your chain, so to speak. So I try and keep it as no, I don't try and push those envelopes, but some guys do. Some guys are very vocal, and like I said, it's somewhat allowed in the community more than probably any other community at this point.
Yeah, and what I've seen out there, to be honest with you, it hasn't been disrespectful or anything.
Right.
It's just been the truth, and there's been not really any disclosure or anything that on their behalf that would hurt anybody or anything. Just the truth that I think we all believe with, and that's what I see in you, and I see in the other SEAL teamers that have been vocal. It's kind of what the U.S. citizen is feeling, in general.
Right. And I mean, we have thoughts and feelings just like everybody else. It's not right. You say we're Superman, and we're Superman at being very focused and being very professional in what we do. But we still have the same desires and want the best for our country, just like everyone else.
Yeah, and I want to testify to that meeting you, Michael. You definitely I didn't even know you were a Navy SEAL until later on it was announced. And you were just a cool, laid-back guy. And even after that, nothing had changed, and you're just like everybody else, and I agree to that definitely.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think and I think you'll find that with just about every Navy SEAL or even any Special Forces guys. I have lots of friends in Army Special Forces, Marine Special Forces, and Air Force. All those guys are extremely professional and very usually soft-spoken, so to speak. But some guys are vocal, like we talked about. But to get back to your idea about there being a problem with Obama, I always, when I was in the service, and still to this day, whoever the commander-in-chief is, that's who we go with. We don't project anything else other than that. And if we don't like him, then we vote him out next time. So unfortunately, some guys didn't want him, and they feel that he's unfit for the job. We vote him out next time. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, it's their opinion,
yeah,
correct?
Exactly.
But after all, he's the boss.
But that being said, there are some interesting anomalies, and I don't want to go into conspiracy theories type stuff. But I mean, when you see something that is concrete and true, then you have to think there's something's going on. I've seen a lot of top-ranking military officers reprimanded or relieved of command. So what is that? What is that? I don't know. But I look at that and I'm like, that's very interesting. I look at the press and what's going on in the media, movies, what's being said, and I see some friction towards him. So I don't know what that's going to lead to or what that is, but there seems to be some problems with the way he's viewed in his commander-in-chief mode. So I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see what happens, yeah, and the way to change if you're not happy with the president, and you said, is to vote.
Right.
And
you still do your job. You're still professional. You just move on and, deal with what you got.
Correct. And, there's another famous Navy SEAL that, I'm fond for myself, and he's actually in the conspiracy arena. That would be Jesse Ventura.
Right.
Are you friends with him at all?
No, I'm not friends with him. I've met him. I've heard guys talk about him, and very positively, some negatively. I'll talk about the positive first. The positive guys were one of the guys that was he was a master chief, and he was in charge of my platoon, the senior enlisted guy, and he talked about Jesse when they were both in Vietnam. He said Jesse was he was quiet, very very focused. He was very lean, tall, lean guy at the time, and that he would lock himself in his barracks room and work out with weights. and blast, acid rock music. So that was kind of like the vision I have about Jesse Ventura. And then the next one, you see him as the outspoken wrestler, and then you see him in the that movie with Arnold. What was that? The Predator movie. That was,
Yeah.
And so he's a little bit larger than life, and ends up being the governor of Wisconsin. Is it Wisconsin? I think he was governor of.
I believe so, yeah.
So, he was the governor of a state. So from that point on, he went into the conspiracy theories. His background as a Navy SEAL and as a governor gave him the credibility to research these controversial issues. I saw several of the stuff that he went into, and I thought it was very, very interesting. He did one on JFK, which is one of my favorite conspiracy theories, if you want to call it that. JFK was supposedly shot from above and into the back of the head, but yet his brains blew out back into where the bullet supposedly came from. That's obviously defies the laws of physics. So anyone that's ever shot anything or shot rounds knows that that's impossible. So when I see
right away, there's a conspiracy,
Yeah, so you look at that and you're like, whether you want to believe that maybe someone was shooting him from up there but shot him or missed, or shot, the governor of Texas, I don't know. But one of those shots obviously came from the front and blew out, the back of the skull. So.
Yeah, and I know, of course, that's one of the most famous conspiracy theories, and one of the items that goes along with that conspiracy theory is a speech he did when he talks about secret societies or secret brotherhoods and fraternities, and shortly thereafter, he's saying he's going to, I think, smash one of the, I think it was the CIA into 1,000 pieces, possibly, I'm not sure, but it's just interesting that you see that. Is there secret societies or brotherhoods involved in the government, in the military, or the SEALs?
I have not. Personally, I've not seen them in the SEALs. I don't believe they exist. I think the brotherhood that we have is just a brotherhood that, and every special forces group has one of these. It's just a passion and professionalism for having been and done, being as a Navy SEAL, and we still bond together, kind of fraternity type thing. But it's no secret stuff that's going on. Not that I've been aware of or care to be involved in, if there is. But I do think there is an underlying group that controls, if not our country, definitely the world. And maybe they have a cohesive group that they work with. I think that the president, like you talked about, other things that John F. Kennedy was going to do, he was going after the Federal Reserve, and he was.
Yeah, actually, that's what I think of the main thing was.
Yeah, and he was going to start a new monetary system that was based on, because the federal government is, people think that it's, our government, but it's not. It's a private banking system. So Kennedy was basically going to kick them out and start our own currency. And I have heard that Lincoln actually did the same thing shortly before he was assassinated. So, you see these parallels throughout history, and you wonder, if there is a connection. We go back to what we were talking about, Jesse Ventura. Jesse Ventura actually went up into the book depository and tried to shoot, the same rifle and accurately a moving target. He could do it. So, trained Navy SEAL, good firing. Obviously, it hasn't been really shooting for a while, but still, it is possible. So, it kind of made that, and he looked at the brains blowing out the back too. So all those things, you look at everything that goes on in the world, and there's obviously something else that's controlling them. Militarily, I've seen it over the years. I've seen, especially over the last 10 years that we've been in war. These wars should have been over long ago, and they're still continuing. It's ridiculous to me, and it's ridiculous to a lot of people that are out there still fighting these wars. We're fighting an enemy that could have been defeated if we'd been given the free will and the wherewithal to do it very quickly, very easily. And yet it drags on and it drags on, it drags on. So it's pretty obvious to a lot of us that there's some manipulation going on. Eisenhower, before he left office, he actually said something along those lines too. He said, "Beware of the industrial military complex," and I believe that's basically taking control, and it's controlling the governments all over the world. I think a lot of the leaders that we think that are running the show are just puppets, in my opinion.
I agree. From again an outsider looking in, and it'll always be a conspiracy until you have absolute proof. But I kind of believe that when we are born, we're kind of born into a conspiracy, and finding knowledge and truth is our job, so we can evolve.
Very good. I agree.
And I actually, in studying history for the last few thousand years, I definitely believe that there's a secret brotherhood behind the scenes. I don't know if it's the same one or I believe it morphs and hybrids over time depending on the various bloodlines and who has the bigger sword, because it seems like they all take each other out, but there's something that is brewing to like the top, like we're almost there, that they've come to an agreement maybe amongst themselves that I'm sure there's not just one group, but they actually all came together recently. It seems like with the Pope Benedict and the new Pope coming in, Pope Francis, and then the Eastern Orthodox Church, first time in 1,000 years, went to see the Pope's inauguration, which was very interesting to me. And then
wow, I didn't know that. That's interesting too. Yeah.
Yeah. Then the other thing that was real interesting, they had said it in Greek, which was the first time ever, and not Latin.
Wow.
So
wow.
Yeah, interesting things coming along, and I think that the division that we had seen is between the East and the West, and that'll be another conspiracy show. But
yeah.
So let me see here. So like the wars and the revolutions that we've had over the past, do you feel that those are the result of possibly manufactured from the secret brotherhood,
yes,
or they just are manifested from relations with other countries?
No, I think there's a bigger plan, bigger picture that's going on. I think they know long in advance that they're going to start these wars, and then they start to foment a negative outlook for whoever's going to be the target. And I think the target's agreed upon. I think that there's like, okay, we're going to be the bad guys this time. You guys are going to be the good times, and the next time you're going to be the bad guys, and we're going to be the good guys. I think it just goes on and on and on. It just keeps repeating itself. These groups get in power. And I think the American Revolution was some of it was manufactured, some of it was genuine. I think there were forces of good that were happening during the Revolution. I did have a past life with Washington as a colonel, so I was involved in that. The Masons. We think of secret societies, and we think the Masons and the Knights Templar and all these groups were negative groups because they had secrets, but they were secret societies that were they had universities, they had teachings that couldn't be available to everyone because they would be misunderstood and taken away. So these secret societies formed, I think, and have been a part of them in past lives. And they're very positive. They're very positive for humankind. They've done good work. But like anything that's good, it can be hijacked, and other groups can come in and cause some problems, and even completely turn these groups around. And I think this has happened over time. To some of these groups, I don't think they're completely negative. I think there's some negative factions that are in them and steering things in a negative way. Now, negative. We look at energy, and there's positive and there's negative energy. I think that we have the choice of which way we go with this energy. This energy is available to everyone. So, do we want to go negative? You have that choice. Then you have the choice to be positive. So, and you can switch back and forth. Obviously, you can think you're doing positive, and you could be manipulated and you're actually doing negative. I think that happens with the military quite often, unfortunately. You think you're going in to do the right thing, and then you find out, yeah, we're being manipulated here. So that happens throughout time. So it's important for you to be right with yourself. I mean, I go into these wars. You think, well, you might be saying to yourself, well, you believe these wars are wrong, but you do them. Yes, I do them because I can have an impact to lessen their negative impact by being there. So that's what I feel I do. And that's one of the things I talk about in the Intuitive Warrior, how each of us can have this ability to go in anywhere and have a more positive impact on our environment.
Yeah, and Michael, I want to say as an outsider looking in, I agree. You talked about the open-mindedness of the Navy SEALs, and I look at your past and how many years. I mean, that was probably a good result of it was probably because of you. That you came in there in the 70s and the 80s, and of course there was not just you. I know it was the other teams, and but once you got involved in the superior aspect, and you could implement some of these ideas, you had created that open-mindedness with your other colleagues. But also, I believe that if we want to change the system, or there's things that we don't like that are negative, we have to be positive influences that get inserted within the system, or we're never going to change it. So if you want to change the military, or you're not right with it, maybe you should go into the military and see what you could do to possibly cultivate open-mindedness, like Michael, and different things. Do you agree, Michael?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you're in not just the military, but if you're in banking, please, if you're a positive person, please have some impact there. And government, obviously, we need good government officials. It's kind of frustrating, I'm sure, because once you get into these organizations, if you don't toe a certain line or play a certain deal, you get taken out one way or the other. Either they, say something bad about you so that everybody, starts looking at you negatively and they just want to get rid of you, or whether they do something very negative, like, maybe somebody gets killed and they blame it on you, or they kill someone in your family, or you. That we know these happens. It's happened throughout time, so it's still happening.
Yeah, this is serious stuff, and we're talking about 3,000, 5,000 years of war, and different brotherhoods and militaries and empires falling, and people getting taken out. There's been whole countries and whole citizens just slaughtered. So you have to use common sense and reasoning from an outsider looking in at the military, or looking at these things. And if people get vocal and something happens, or they write this book they never should have wrote, and that as a citizen looking at them, they shouldn't write that, and they put themselves and their family at risk. And like you said, sometimes they're taken out for doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you the truth, I felt that could have been a possibility with writing what I wrote, because it's this book, Intuitive Warrior. If we really followed this book, we would end war. So I thought, if this thing really takes off, there could be a possibility, or before it even takes off, there could be a possibility that they defame me, do away with my character, so forth. I don't know. But I've been very fortunate. It's been extremely well received by those who have been impacted by or have read it. There's some people that completely don't understand it, which is, some of us are crawling, some of us are walking, some of us are running. I think this is for the people that are ready to run. And if you're still in the crawling stage, you read this book, you're going to go, what a kook. Yeah, absolutely. Because that's where you are, and you can't understand it yet. That's okay. So hopefully someday you will, because this is the truth. I mean, if you pick up this book and you're inspired by it, that's great. Apply it to any aspect of your life. We look back in history. I mean, we can look at warriors throughout time who have inspired people. Look at Masashi Miyamoto, the famous Japanese samurai who wrote the Book of Five Rings. I mean, he's, Japanese housewives read this book and are inspired by his philosophy, but he's talking about swording, killing people. But there's positive within his work. So, everyone can have a positive aspect, and that positive aspect is by, being love alive in the world. So that's one of the things that I talk about in my book. Love is the most powerful force in the universe. I mean, we hear this all the time, but do we really apply it in our lives? Most of us, maybe. Most of us, would like to, but, do we actually try? I talk about how focusing the energy of love in these different environments actually settles the energy so that there's no more war. I've done this.
Yeah, I want to ask you a question, and this wasn't part of my question list here. When I met you a couple years ago, I felt just so great, and looking back and I reading your book, I was like going, was Michael sending out love signals during that convention? Because I felt so sold on, not sold on, I loved Sedona. I loved everything about it, and I just felt this great feeling, and I didn't have that going into it, but when I was in the group with you, I felt that. Were you doing that a little bit? Do you do that everywhere you go?
I do that everywhere I go.
Okay,
that's awesome that you realized that and felt that energy. So you're obvious, you're advanced. You can feel those subtle energies. Most of us aren't. So that's very insightful. Yes, everywhere that I go, I do that. So when I'm in a place that's war torn, I send out these energies, and the war stops where I'm at. It's happened over and over again, so it can happen. There's the energies there, the abilities are there, and it's not just me. There's other people in the world that do this stuff too. Go ahead.
No, it's unique that you could be, a Navy SEAL and a warrior and still have that peace and that love within and be able to, bam, on a heartbeat snap if you have to, because it's not a weakness. Someone doesn't have to take that for a weakness, because you'll defend your family or your country when you need to, but if you don't have to, you don't want to. And you talked about the samurais, and they were also a peaceful, wise warrior, like a Gnostic warrior, correct?
Absolutely, yes. And I actually had a lifetime with Masashi Miyamoto. I was his one of his aides, one of his students, and yeah, that's absolutely true. That they were very quiet, gentle people until it was time to go to war. The anger, if you display anger in war and combat, then it debilitates you. So you had to be in that special place, that intuitive place. And Masashi was very adept at tapping that intuitive side. He could go into a combat situation and just open his mind and focus on what the weakness was of his adversary without ever even studying, this other adversary, and defeat them easily. So he was quite an inspiration. But this is something that carries through with anyone. Anyone has this ability, and he talked about that in his book. Anyone can tap this, and the way to tap this is this intuitive side. This intuitive side is something that all of us have, and this is what we're moving to. I think in higher consciousness, we're moving from an analytical process based culture, society, world, humanity, to one that's intuitive, that picks up on these subtle information. And intuition is like, it's a knowing without knowing. And think of any time that you, let's say you met someone, and it could be a love interest. You met them, and it turned out, that it was all wrong, or it was all right, whichever. So let's take they're all wrong. So you look back on it, you go, I should have listened to myself. I knew that person was wrong for me. See, these little things always happen in our life, but we don't listen to them. You have you have a phone call that comes through, and you've just been thinking about your wife, and you pick up the phone, or your a friend or whatever, and you pick up the phone and you answer it, and it's that person. These are all intuitive things that happen to us every day. But we usually just blow them off. It's like, well, that was just a coincidence. No, these are not coincidences. These are our higher selves that are actually picking up this information. If we focus on it and start to desire it in our lives, we'll get more of it.
So that's what you're saying is tune into that feeling.
Yeah.
And it's a I believe myself, this is my explanation. It's a type of energy that you're almost feeling within your DNA that almost vibrates, and it's just like a fuzzy feeling, like inside, a warm feeling kind of thing. And then sometimes, the intuition is just a familiar feeling, right? Correct?
Absolutely, yeah. But so the key is to, once you find these, that you find this feeling. Sometimes you might not even know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I have those things happen to me, but I don't feel anything. So it's important to just kind of take a step back to and look at what happened before or during, the way you felt. Maybe there was you're kind of like in a meditative, kind of like blank state, and then this thought came through, and then you had this experience where someone called you, or you had this insight that, wow, I'm going to become a rocket engineer, just out of the blue. And then you go to school and become a rocket engineer. You build the best rocket the world has ever seen before. So because you had this intuition that you could do it. So these things come through. We listen to them. We can have greatness in our lives, and that's what they're for.
Okay. The first, let me see here. You believe that everybody is reincarnated?
I believe that there's many of us that have had many, many, many lives. I think there's some young souls, and a young soul could be it could possibly be their first incarnation here on Earth. It could be a soul coming in. So I think that most of the souls or most of the people that are here on Earth are reincarnations, but it can be brand new souls coming in, or that not necessarily brand new souls. I think souls are very long lived, but being in this environment, being in this density, because I think we come from a soul level, which is a higher vibration, and down into this denser vibration.
To matter, to the body.
Yes, because we want to experience. We want to have these challenges. These challenges basically teach us things that we want to learn and to experience. And as we have these experiences, we grow with these experiences. Maybe we had simple experiences as a young soul, and now we want more advanced experiences. So maybe you were just, let's say, a young kid. Most of your life, all you did was just, and I don't want to degrade anyone by saying this, because everything that anyone does can have its sense of perfection within it. And that was something that Musashi was trying to teach. He was trying to teach, reach for the perfection in all things. So if we look at any aspect of what we do, and let's say you sell flowers by the road, most of us might look at that and go, that's very simple. But maybe that's something very important and very high for you at that time. Maybe in your next life you'll be, something greater. Maybe you'll be a businessman, have a multi-million-dollar business. Or not that that's any better than the guy selling flowers on the road, because it might not be. That guy selling flowers on the road might be an advanced, philosopher. Who knows? But we always choose different things that will challenge us more. Sometimes we'll come into an incarnation maybe with a handicap, just so we can experience what it's like to be without all of our facilities with us. So it's obviously going to be more challenging. So maybe we had a lifetime where we thought negatively and ridiculed or hurt people that had handicaps. The next life we'll come in with that handicap and we'll experience what that's like. So we balance some karma and stuff and really learn what that's all about. So I think that's what happens with all these incarnations. So I researched my incarnations since I was a young kid. The first thing that really inspired me, because I've always been military minded kind of in this lifetime, I was fascinated by General Patton. General Patton in his movie Patton with George C. Scott. In there, there's a point where he talks about how he was at this one battle, and he talked about the battle, and he looked at the guys around him, and he said, "You guys must think I'm crazy." And it's like, and they didn't say anything, because of course he's General Patton. You don't say it to General Patton. So that kind of inspired me, and I was a young kid then. I think I was like 7 or 8 years old when I saw it. I was like, wow. He had past lives, and he talks about it. He knew his past lives. So I think it's not so much important that you have a memory of your past lives, because I've had almost 100 past lives that I have memories of now, but that you have a connection with these lives, and you know what you were doing, why you're having these lives. Usually these lives are for advancing your soul development, but they can also be for helping other souls. So it's not so much the focus on self, but it's also the focus on others. So, for instance, your wife now and your children now, very possible that you guys have had many lives together. This happens quite often. That we'll come in soul groups and work together and help each other, through different challenges. So,
can I comment on that real quick, Michael?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I've been to prison. In 2005, I was having a real tough time with. It was actually before then I got in trouble for selling marijuana, and then I got a domestic thing happen, and I went to prison, and I was going through convulsions. I was addicted to alcohol, to prescription drugs, and so forth, and I lost the girl that I was with, and she was part of the problem. But anyways, I had this vision of a woman in my dreams, and it was just after I read the Bible about 40 days into my sentence, and I was really going through it, not thinking I wanted to make it through the rest of my sentence, and I had this vision of a woman, and I remember just feeling this warmness in me, and it was my wife, and I actually met my wife through someone I met in prison who was writing her sister.
Wow.
And I wrote a letter to her, and we basically wrote each other like 3 times, and she was like, "Who's this guy?" And I actually met her when I got out after I got my stuff together and I had a job, and we started dating, and I'm married to her, and I feel just like she's my soulmate, and we have 2 beautiful children, sparks of light, and
yeah,
I couldn't be happier. I went from literal hell for my choices and my emotions of choosing to hate, anger, choosing to drown it in alcohol and drugs, and making poor choices that were the result of all those emotions and those bad habits, to a living hell to a living heaven now. And I attribute it to that vision and meeting my soulmate.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, you have a beautiful family, and obviously, I feel very confident that you guys have had many lives together. But
Thank you,
I
Mark.
mean, we've set up challenges for ourselves. I mean, mine was being a Navy SEAL. Yours was, your addictions like that.
Gotcha.
Everyone will have a challenge, and some of these challenges will happen more and more and more. The more advanced soul you are, the more challenges you have. So when I when I have a challenge coming into my life, I've learned to go, okay, I'm going to learn something now, instead of just focusing on the negative aspect and just getting all wrapped up in how this could happen to me. Why is this happening to me? I'm like, what is this here to teach me?
Amen. I agree.
Oh,
And it changes your life when you do that.
oh yeah, it makes it a lot easier, doesn't it? I mean, you
It
can
does.
live years and years and years in self-loathing, or you can get through it fairly quickly, like you did. That's a great story. Good job.
Yeah, and it just makes you tougher when you have that mindset, and when you get through these battles and you kind of take them head on. What doesn't kill you is going to make you stronger, and it's so true.
Oh yeah, that's one of the things that we talk about in the SEAL teams. Yeah. So we have the only easy day was yesterday, and that which doesn't kill me makes me stronger. I mean, all these little sayings that kind of motivate you. They're all out there. Take one, pick one. There's many of them. Go on the internet, find one that works for you. I used to do affirmations all the time, and they really can help focus you and change your life.
I agree. And what do you believe that we all go through those stormy seasons as well? Do you have times when you're a little bit down and just for a day or two, and you get back out of it and through self-talk, or is it pretty much you're positive 100% of the time?
Yeah, no, I'm not positive 100% of the time.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no one I think on earth that is. It's just not something that when you come into this very dense, very dramatic environment, it takes a lot of focus. It's very draining. It's a hard world. And I've seen many channelers that have talked about how in our galaxy this is the hardest world of any world in the whole galaxy. So I would say so. It's pretty tough. Got a lot of challenges here, but there's also a lot of rewards. I mean, the satisfaction of when someone writes me about something, how my book has inspired them, how it has saved their life. It's like, wow, I had that kind of impact. That's pretty impressive. I mean, it gives you a great warm feeling. You can't. I wouldn't trade those feelings for anything. I would gladly go through SEAL training again to get some of these feelings. But fortunately, I don't have to. I've already done that, been there.
And that's what we're here for, right, Michael? We're here to love and serve.
Absolutely. I think we're going to go through those periods where we focus on ourselves, and then once we master whatever we're having to work through, we want to share. That's the greatest thing that we can do as a human being. Share with other people. What we have gone through, and help them get through their challenges too.
No, I agree, and that's part of the inspiration for this show, and I appreciate you coming on. I have probably 5 more questions for you. Do you have some time still, Michael?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. As far as, do you believe deja vu is somewhat of a form of reincarnation? What is deja vu to you?
I think it's there's many levels of deja vu. I think deja vu sometimes can be an affirmation of like when we're on the other sides in heaven, if you want to call it that, or in the soul realm between lives. We set up these little affirmation points, and we have these those are a lot of times deja vu. Like you're okay. I feel like I've been here before. Yes, that's an affirmation that you're on the right track. The other aspects of deja vu could be like what you're talking about, and I have these very, very often with my past life research, is where we're like, I think I've been here. I think I've done this, or those are definitely reincarnation things. So that deja vu, where we look at or read something and go, or I've been in places in the world. Like I was in Paris. I went to the Versailles, and as I'm walking to Versailles, I was like, I have been here. I went to Thomas Jefferson's Monticello home, and I was like, I'd been here, and I started describing to the people I was with where the rooms were, what the rooms were like, what they were like in those times. Like, for instance, in Monticello, I remember we're out in the backyard, and we're looking at the grounds, and there was a lady that was leading my group around and talking about the home. And I said, were there a lot of large trees around the perimeter of this backyard? And she looked at me and she's like, well, yeah, there were these great oaks that were surrounding it, but they got a disease and they died. But that was long ago. And I was like, oh. So, I mean, you get these deja vu moments like that, and it's I see that, I get them now, and I'm like, okay, what is this? Same thing, what is this trying to tell me?
Yeah, so it's you're basically getting that intuitive feeling,
yeah.
And then you're talking to yourself, and then you confirm it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Don't blow them off. Don't go, oh wow, that's weird. No, it's not weird. It's a very positive experience that you're having right now. Feel it, go through it. Maybe the insights won't come to you now. Maybe it might take years for the insights of what you just had that deja vu come through for is all about. But wherever you're at, and as far as your development as a soul, a lot of times these insights will come a lot faster. And if you start to really focus on your intuitive abilities, these deja vu moments are a daily event. I have them throughout my day now. They're fantastic.
Yeah, and Plato had said basically, a deja vu he had described as knowledge regained. It's almost like knowledge we had in a past lifetime, whether that be like your trip to France or other things. I've been studying Egypt, and there's this specific time, and you might have been involved with Alexander the Great. It was in the Siwa Oasis, and
right.
I remember studying that about a year and a half ago, and I was involved somehow in that time, in that initiation of Alexander the Great into the Brotherhood of Amun-Ra, and I'm really attracted to that brotherhood, and I tracked it back to the Ramses, the pharaohs in Egypt, and the different dynasties and so forth. And I've been really attracted to that. And then also all these philosophers through time. And I'll be studying one, and then I'll find another quote that is another guy later down the road who also studied the same guy. And it's like we're all carrying the same teachings, and we're all attracted to one another.
Oh yeah, the Siwa Oasis. I was with Alexander the Great. I was Leonatus, and I was one of the companion cavalry. Alexander the Great learned a lot in that Siwa Oasis. They gave him past life information, and the past life information that he received gave him insight. So this is the importance of past life recall and in past life investigations. Because they can, from that point on, Alexander the Great opened himself up to amazing things. I mean, he went on to finish conquering, the Persian Empire, and he had past life connections with all that. And I'll go in that in a minute. But basically, what was happening at the Siwa Oasis, he was fulfilling an internal development, and this internal development is something that all the pharaohs went through, and they called him a pharaoh of Egypt because he had connected with that spark within. Spark within was something that Jesus had taught, Buddha had taught. I mean, all these masters come through and talk about this. Once you connect with that spark within, then you start to lead people on the people your subjects or the people you're working with. If you have a voice like you do right now, Mo, is great. You can share information with large multitudes of people and enlighten them. So that was what Alexander the Great experienced at the Siwa Oasis, and that would be very interesting if you were in that lifetime too. I wouldn't doubt it whatsoever.
Yeah, is there a test that anybody could take? Is there someone that you go to help you with this, or are you doing this yourself right now?
I do both. I go through Kevin Ryerson. Kevin Ryerson is he channels this master called Aton Ray, and Aton Ray is giving me a lot of insights. He also channels St. John, who was with Jesus. He channels another entity that was during the time frame of Shakespeare. I had lifetimes with Kevin Ryerson in every one of those lives. So it's interesting that he and I connected. So it's not unusual, like for instance you and I, to connect like this again from previous past lives. I don't know exactly what they are, but if the two of us focus on them, just like you're talking about Alexander the Great, I bet we could probably pin it down pretty quick. And it doesn't actually have to be, what I've done with my next several books. In my next book, which is on past lives, we'll focus on a lot of these lives that I pulled in, memories of. It doesn't have to be always someone from history. It could be because one of my lives was I was a general during the time frame of Israel when Nebuchadnezzar came in and conquered Israel and took them back as slaves into Babylon. I have memories of that, but I have not been able to track down that particular individual in history. There's no mention of him that I can find yet. So I still wrote a chapter on him. But a lot of them, I wrote chapters on. You would be interested in a lot of these because Alexander the Great was a reincarnation of Achilles, which I had a lifetime with him. He was also the reincarnation of Cambyses. Cambyses was the son of Cyrus the Great, who I was in a lifetime. So all these interconnections, you would be fascinated that Alexander the Great went on to be Caesar. So
wow,
Caesar in his lifetime regretted that he looked at the Alexander the Great sarcophagus with him inside it, and he looked at him and he was like, here I am, in my, I think it was 40s or 50s at the time, I can't remember what, and Alexander the Great had conquered, most of the world, and I'm just getting started. So, but that motivated him. He had that connection again, and then he, got busy again. So it's all very interesting.
No, it's interesting you bring up Caesar because I was a big fan of the cable show Rome, and I actually made a video.
I saw that too. Yeah.
Yeah, there's the one of the most touching scenes that I actually cried, and every time I feel like I was there for sure, and I just cry when he was assassinated.
Oh,
There's something. Yeah, I was either involved somehow or there, but every single time I cry when I see that, and it just touches my soul.
Right. We come in to help and like I said, as soul groups. So I've had many incarnations with Alexander the Great, Caesar, whoever you want to name them, in the soul incarnation of the time. But in that lifetime, I was Rufio, which was one of his close generals that went through all of his camp. I have memories of going to Britain with him, his campaigns against the Gauls. I have all these memories. And when he left to go back, we actually had a dual wedding. When he actually did marry Cleopatra, and my wife in this life, Tracy Joe, was the double of Cleopatra, and I married her too. So it was kind of like a dual wedding that we had.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. We'll talk about that. I have some different studies I've done on that. I also believe that he did marry her, and actually that Augustus was their son, and that's Caesarion.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And that's who, of course, we'll get into that another time. I don't want to get too much into the Jesus conspiracy and Augustus Caesar right this second.
Sure.
But so people, you say soul groups, so people could have multiple parallel past lives and current lives?
Oh yeah, absolutely. What happens is as you get more advanced in your soul development, you'll start to have multiple parallel lives, and I've had several lifetimes where I've had multiple lives. During the time frame of the Greeks, I was several Greek philosophers. One was Thales, and one was Parmenides. So we're anchoring in this new way of thinking for the Western world. And then later on, I was let me pull up these names. I was Athenian General Thucydides, who actually wrote about the Peloponnesian War. And parallel lives, I'm having these lifetimes in Rome. So I'm having I was the second king of Rome, Numa Pompilius. So you can have these parallel lives to develop different aspects of yourself. So throughout these lifetimes, that's what we'll do. There's I think I've read somewhere that there's up to 3 to 7% of the human population at any one time that is having parallel lives. That might sound like very, very small numbers, but when you consider there's around 7 billion people on the planet, that's many millions of people that are having parallel lives. It's kind of like multitasking. You're like right now, you're probably maybe right. I don't know. You're definitely a multitasker type guy. So maybe
No, I'm respecting the conversation, but pulling up different things.
oh
Yes.
yeah. I mean, I do the same thing. You know, it's like a juggler. You know, you can have many balls in the air at one time. You can have many lives going on at one time. As you master, you know, these lifetimes, you're like, you know, I want to like, you know, focus on this aspect, and I'm going to go into this culture, or I'm going to be, you know, like I was a Pharaoh Sesostris. You know, Pharaoh Sesostris was a Nubian. He was a black man. In a more current lifetime, I mean, I was a black slave. I mean, I've done quite a lot of lifetimes. In a more current lifetime, I was a Tuskegee Airman. And I actually have found that person. It took me quite some time to find that person, but I actually found the person. There was actually a picture that was taken of him before he went on his last combat mission, and he died over Germany. So we can have these multiple parallel lives. I think in that life it was more a focus of stopping a negative, helping to stop a negative that was in the world, while at the same time I'm having, you know, a lifetime as a politician. So you can have all these multiple lives. You know, that's a possibility too.
Yeah, and a lot of people, they look outside, they don't understand this, or it might seem foreign or even kind of funny to them. A lot of the time I think that they're just not there yet. They're not evolved. They're not open to that yet. Maybe they haven't reached the knowledge or that time in their life to open them up to it, or possibly it's just not this life because they're one of those young souls.
Yeah,
Do you believe that as well?
you don't have to, you know, focus or connect with past life information to, you know, advance your soul. It's not an absolute definite you have to do that. But saying that, if you do, it will further your advancement very quickly. I mean, you will definitely advance a lot faster, because there's a soul path that we have. If you can connect with your last, you know, past lives, it can help you to move forward a lot quicker. There's oftentimes traumas that we have from previous lives, and one of the favorite ones I like to bring up is, I remember one of the guys that's very Weiss. I can't remember his name right now, but he's written several books on past lives. They started their you know, psychologists, and one of the things you do as a psychologist, you take people back to the point in time in this life they weren't even thinking about past lives, where they had the traumatic experience in life, and then they work through that trauma and release it, and then they have clarity and they can move on in their lives. Well, there was one particular person he was talking to, and he started regressing them back to a point. They hypnotized them, started regressing them back to a point in life, and they ended up in a several, you know, way back in the like 1700s or something, and they were hung. And this particular person had, you know, problems with their throat and their neck and stuff like that. Once they realized that that was in a past life, and it shouldn't or you know, couldn't affect them in this life, they released all that pain. They never had a problem again. So that's, you know, on a certain level, that's one thing that you can release in these past lives. A lot of wounds that I had in past lives were brought forward in this life. So I had problems with my shoulder, my knee, and so forth. When I found out that I was Louis Armistead at the Battle of Gettysburg, and these are places he was wounded, miraculously these pains, these problems went away. So we can get released from, you know, all these different aspects that are holding us back, and you can move forward. You know, and if you know that you've had these lifetimes, you can pull the information from these lives. Like, you know, I've been a writer in many lives, so now my focus has become, as a writer, has become much clearer, more precise, more crisp. So it's these past life information things can be very, very promising, very helpful.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about the past injuries affecting people and, of course, yourself. And it brings me to the kind of the scientific alchemical explanation that you'll hear in regards to the occult in describing the human, that we're not just, we're not just Michael Jaco or Mo Badar, just this one singular person, but we're actually made up of almost multiple chemicals and entities, or an astral body. Do you believe that it's the soul, the astral body, imprinting these past life injuries onto the physical body? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I do. I think that we bring in what I've noticed in a lot of these incarnations, and I have similar facial features. They so yeah, what you're talking about, the imprint is actually carrying through. There's an imprint on your soul, so to speak, and when you incarnate and you create a new spirit with a physical form, then this can carry through. It can imprint into this new soul, or this, not new soul, but this new spirit. So I feel that each one of these lives, you're building basically a spiritual being here on earth. And this spiritual being, as we think of time as linear, but as I've researched these past lives, I can go back into these lives and they're still happening on the timeline. So I think that once we become more, and this has been talked about through many secret societies and also through many societies around the open. I mean, you can research this information. We can go into quantum physics and so forth and find that we can explain this phenomenon. There is not really a timeline as we know it. Obviously, it happens in the three-dimensional world if we're focused in it, but if we can pull ourselves much larger and focus ourselves outside of this, we can pull in a lot more information and find a lot more stuff about our environment and our world that would blow us away, which it does me. The more I learn, the more I'm just amazed at the complexity of the universe.
Yeah, definitely. On the astral part, the soul, I wrote this is kind of a personal question. I know other people out there have them, and I noticed in researching the birthmark.
Right.
I have a curious birthmark on my thigh, and it's a white one, and they're really rare. And this birthmark, in studying everybody I've been studying in my family line that I actually have had a DNA test, connects me to Pythagoras. He had a white birthmark on his thigh. Seculus, I believe that's how I'm not good at pronouncing things. Right. He was the founder of Syria. He also had, they said, a white birthmark the shape of an anchor on his thigh. It's just kind of interesting. I feel maybe Pythagoras, but not really, or I don't feel I was the founder of Syria.
It's a possibility. So, what happened with me, I was kind of like what you just said. I was like, who am I to have been anything in history? If anything, I was like, maybe around these people. So once I started to connect with actually having been, important people in history, then it really opened a door for me. So don't sell yourself short. It's very possible that you were Pythagoras. I mean, with your insight and your intuitive abilities and your philosophical bent, very, very possible. If so, then we would have known each other, because I was incarnate, and I have fleeting memories of Pythagoras. So it's very, very possible.
Yeah, and it's interesting because most of my memories are where I feel deja vu, the intuition. It's always on that teaching priest side of the side of the brotherhood. I was more of the kind of the sons of water, and it seems like you more were you were a priest king kind of combination, because I know back then, for the most part, when you were a pharaoh or a king, you were a warrior, you were a priest, you were everything.
Oh yeah,
correct.
Definitely, that's part of what we were talking about with Alexander the Great. You connect with that higher self that's within all of us, and once you connect with that, it opens up a lot of doors for you. I've had many lives that have been like that. I was Angelo Tancredi. I was in the Fourth Crusade, and I had a friend that eventually became known as Saint Francis of Assisi. So when I came back from the Fourth Crusade, which he was supposed to go on, but kind of like had this moment of clarity, I guess, and he copped out of the Fourth Crusade and came back home, and that's when he started his visions and so forth. That's very, very popular throughout history of being Saint Francis. I came back, and I came into his fold. So I had a warrior aspect. I went through the warrior aspect just like I have in this life, and then I embraced the priestly aspect, the intuitive side. So that's something that's been, I've gone through many lifetimes like that. And I think that, the challenges that we were just talking about, the challenges for me in many lives have been, I have a lot of familiarity with being a warrior. So it's easier for me to to go in and hit these really heavy challenges that you need to get through before you can open up these doors to the creative and intuitive aspects.
Yeah, and I agree. I look back at the challenges, when I had went through all the different difficulties I went through in the hell, and I thank God for them. I thank God for going to prison and all these different challenges that I went through, because it made me who I am today. And I would have never experienced it or could say, hey, I've been there, I've done that, I've had that pain if I didn't have that pain.
Absolutely.
So.
And by your example, that's very important. By your example, and a lot of people look up the Navy SEALs, but look at people that have been in the prison system, or maybe that are in the prison system. By your example, they can look at you and go, I can get out of this too. I can be what I really am, which is love alive in the world. I can be a beautiful thing and be contributing to humanity.
Yeah, even if I screwed up when I had felonies and I have tattoos, it doesn't matter,
Absolutely. I mean, I know of no one, especially Navy SEALs, that didn't go through some serious challenges, at some point in their life, and then they were able to focus themselves and and then become Navy SEALs. I was a knucklehead as a kid, so I mean, almost everyone that I know that's anybody these days has had serious challenges. I mean, name someone that had a perfect life. I don't think it exists,
Yeah, I agree. And some people talk, bad about our country. I know it's not perfect, but I'm glad this happened here and I incarnated here, because in other countries, for a lot of what I've done, I wouldn't be around. I'd be executed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we've come a long way here in America, and I think this is something that happens throughout time. We've talked about Egypt, we've talked about Iran, we've talked about Greece, talked about Italy. We could go into the Europe, because I was as you know, what we talked about before. I was many kings throughout Europe, and now here we are in America. So this is a progressive thing. So we go from and not to say that there's no one that evolved or advanced in any of these other countries, but I think there's like this pattern that keeps happening where the advanced souls go in to create these new environments where this enlightenment that we've been talking about can happen. And I think America has been one of these places. You go to any of these countries, I go to Middle Eastern countries all the time. I protect people, protect government people, and I've been doing it for over 10 years now. In these war-torn areas, I've been to Iraq. I was Ambassador Bremer's detail, one of his head guys. I've been to Afghanistan. You name it. If there's a trouble spot, I've probably been there. In each of these countries, these people might speak very angrily. They might have strong emotions about America. But if you give any of them, if you say, I'll give you a visa to America, they will drop down on the ground and praise God and say, thank you. When can I go?
Yeah, it's the catch-22, love and hate us, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I believe that's where the secret brotherhood has worked behind the scenes, because a lot of this knowledge and that truth out there, if the powers that be did not want any of us to either find it, research it, or talk about it, it simply wouldn't happen. And this is one of the first times that I believe in history where we could talk across the world openly and talk about these truths within reason, without putting, of course, the government or anybody in danger, that we could say these truths. And I think that's why we're here.
Yes, I think it has happened in long ago history, but I think that we've devolved, and I think that devolution is over. I think we're evolving back towards a higher vibration. The evidence is everywhere. Like you're talking about, these truths that we can research and find now haven't been available for a long time, and now they're becoming open again. So that you're right. This is a time of great change. It's a time where you can find this information, but you have to dig, because there's a lot of resistance for you finding it. And if you go with the flow, they will guide you just like the slaves of old, and you will not ever find this information. So you have to go against the grain, and most people won't do that, unfortunately.
I agree, but it's definitely out there. And in regards to reincarnation, I wanted to just touch briefly on races. And you had mentioned being of a different race, of course, now when someone might look at you, even though I don't know your DNA, we would think that you're a Caucasian American, right? And
Sure.
then you had mentioned being a Nubian, and I've had my DNA tested, and I'm related to the Phoenicians, the
Oh,
Ethiopians, and so forth, and the Greeks. And it's amazing
wow.
that when you look at I had my DNA tested a couple of years ago, but when you look at my specific haplogroup, I'll look at pictures, I'll see someone in Ethiopia, and he's as black as can be. He's an African man, but of course he looks a little bit different than the average, say, a Nubian or someone else. And then when you look at the Greeks, they don't look like the Ethiopians, but they actually share almost the exact same DNA with some little changes. It seems like that when I look at that and I realize that, it really opened me up, because I just looked in the mirror. I'm a blonde hair, blue eye guy. My parents are from Canada. I'm from France, and then,
Uh,
whoa, I actually came from, Ethiopia and Egypt area and so forth.
that's fascinating. So there must be some scientific validity to what you're talking about, as bringing in this DNA from past lives. So that's phenomenal. Yeah, I've never had the DNA testing like that. I know I have had DNA samples because everyone that goes in the military gets that done, supposedly to identify you if your mains become unidentifiable. So I would be very curious to find that out. I would also be curious on a scientific level to take some of these past life features that I keep coming up with that are very similar to mine, and do where they do the like the police when they're looking for someone.
Yeah.
They do the profile, and they have the scientific way to age you and all that kind of stuff. Or when they're looking for lost kids, they look at 10 years ago he looked like this. If we sped up the clock 10 years, he probably looked like this. I would be interested in doing something like that with my pictures from these past lives, and kind of like intersperse them in there and kind of do that thing too. I think that would be interesting to for people to see. But yeah, I mean, I've been every race here on Earth. I've been pretty much all over the planet in different lifetimes. So when you look at that, this racism thing, it's ridiculous to me. If you knew that you had a life as a black man, would you ridicule or that race? It would be ridiculous, So,
I agree. All right. Do you need to answer that real quick? No.
no, that's okay. Thanks.
All right. Religions and even skin color. Oh no, that was my last question. How do we end all war forever?
That's a great one. One of the things we can do is we can see that we're manipulated into these things. Look more carefully at why we're going into these wars. I talk about how I've gone into these countries and I've sent out the love vibration. This is something that's been documented through the Maharishi Yoga group. They've been doing for over 20 years the same thing that I'm doing. They get together as a group and they focus on different places. They documented where they've gone into the U.S. and they focus your meditative energies on a particular city. And the city's crime rate and accident rate has gone down dramatically, up to 70% in some of these cities. And once they release that focus, it kind of returns to back where it was. So they're basically proving that this focus can have an impact on the planet. As more and more of us wake up and become aware of who we really are and become examples of love in the world, then this energy will start to this negative energies that cause war will dissipate. Obviously, there's manipulations that happen to get us in these wars, but we have to agree. They have to get us to agree to these wars. And usually the way they do that, they fly buildings, planes into buildings and, so forth. So we have to look at that and go, no, that's wrong. You're manipulating us into another war, and we're not going to do it. That's one way. And the other is to, like I said, focus on that love aspect. It raises the vibration so that these negativity energies cannot exist. They just don't. Love is like we said, love is the strongest force in the universe. So the negative aspect can't overcome the love if it's there. It just can't.
Do you think the ultimate plan is to end all wars forever in the end of the powers that be that rule the earth?
Yeah, the powers that were. That's what now, because they're on their last legs, I believe. The powers that were. Yeah, I mean, they're a lot of those guys are falling in line too. They're waking up as well. I mean, they're coming off their power trip. I think there's a lot of them that are within that organization that can't release that because they would be killed. are probably worse. You can say what it was worse than being killed, and that would be your family being killed in front of you. So, that's still going to go on. I think as some of those guys start to wake up, or as light workers, so to speak, insert into those groups, which has been happening over time, they're going to lessen the impacts of those negative groups. So it's happening. It's just like they inserted their negative aspect into positive groups and overcame them. The positive groups are going to come back and take over again now.
I agree. And to the listeners out there, I was focusing when I first, got into the truth and knowledge arena, a lot of the times listening to the negative and these radio show hosts that just focus on the negative conspiracy stuff. And that is one of the worst things that we could do. Definitely, go to the news and get some knowledge,
yes.
But to focus on that is going to create the war within, correct?
Oh, yes. Yeah, you have to stay informed, but like I mentioned before, energy is energy. You can take that energy and create negative with it, or you can create positive with it. If you want to focus on negative, you will attract that to your life. Absolutely. I mean, look at everything that has happened in your life. All the stuff that we've been talking about, the two of us. I mean, you've had great insights, and you've shared some great stories as well. If we look at, what changed the negative outcomes in our lives, or what made us, a great, I would say being a Navy SEAL was a great point in my life. It was because I focused on that to the exclusion of all negativity. I am going to be a Navy SEAL. There's nothing going to stop me, Of course, there's certain things that can pop up, but you overcome them. They're challenges. They're challenges for you to realize your goal, your dream. They're going to happen, but you have to stay on focus.
Yeah, and you have to overcome and be positive and do. It's one thing to think about things and to think positive, but it's another thing to do and to serve. And that's really where I get the most satisfaction, and I could see that in you as well, Michael. You serve the country for 24 years as a Navy SEAL, but I could see that you're definitely happier doing the intuitive warrior stuff and, sharing with me, here's this guy that, I met you a couple of years ago. I'm not a Navy SEAL or anybody who I think would be important to a Navy SEAL, but you're just like, you share and you are open to other people, and you're a friend, and it means a lot to me and to people out there that, aren't doing a show or their own blog or writing a book. Like Michael, you could do whatever you want, but you got to do and you got to serve from your heart, correct?
Oh yeah, that's very good. Yeah, the heart. There's a lot of information out now. There's a guy named what's his name? Is Chester. I can't think of his first name right off the top of my head, but he's come up with a new platonic solid, which is called the heart. I think it was heart. Look up chest U platonic solid and put a heart chest or something like that. But I would look it up real quick. But I want to stay focused on this point.
Sure.
He's found that the heart itself is kind of like a doorway, and it pulls in these new energies. There's also stuff from the Heart Math Institute, which has found that the heart itself has more larger energy field than the brain. So when we have the two in cohesion, when they both work together coherently, we can achieve very, very amazing things.
Yeah, his name's Frank Chester.
Yes, very good, thank you.
Yeah, the Seattle Waldorf School. There's a video I see here, Sacred Geometry, Formative Forces, and the Human Heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Check that out.
Sounds great. I want to watch that.
Fascinating new information. I spent 12 years on developing this. Gives an excellent presentation. There's several presentations out there. It has its own website. So, yeah, it's. I mean, we're explaining all this information that we're talking about through science, and I love that. I love to integrate science and spirituality again, because it's been a long time since it's been the two have been disconnected. So bringing them back together again, like we're seeing now, is perfect.
I agree, and I started doing that a little bit on my blog the past couple of weeks, because I identified a chemical that happens internally, sulfur, and relating to hell and burning inside of our bodies and how it affects our whole nervous system and our hearts. And yeah, it's fascinating. And then, of course, water, which our bodies are primarily comprised of in our DNA, is the way to heaven and to happiness and to bliss. And they give you hints of that all throughout the Bible and through all the different occult teachings and so forth. in the Taoist, the water is the way. So in another show, and I want to do a couple more with you in the next few months, but I'd like to hit on the warrior aspects, more of the military martial arts training, and then possibly also the science, more of the science of what you're talking about. Can you do that possibly?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And that's probably that would be a good show if we focus on that. We've gone out on out on the limb, like Shirley MacLaine talked about. So it's probably, over the top for a lot of people. Those people that are still with us, that are still listening to this, God be with you. You're a fantastic being. Good job, Or if you're, you left long ago, hopefully something like, we could come up with, just focusing on the warrior aspect. A lot of people were into that. We can stay on track and on focus and not get off on the foo-foo stuff that most people get turned off on, unfortunately.
No, I think there's a lot of people that are, of course, attracted to what you're doing because of that, and then also what I am. And we'll talk about the military part, the MMA, and then also the science.
Absolutely.
But you have a new book coming out, Warrior Archetypes and the Awakening of a Warrior. Can you tell us what to expect in that book?
Yeah, I have a guy in Germany that I'm working with. His name is Chris, and he's been doing a great job on working with me. He translated the book into the Intuitive Warrior into German. He's done probably about a fourth of the editing so far. He feels that he's going to be done probably, sometime before early June. So that's great. I'll release it very quickly after that. This book is going to focus on a lot of my lifetimes in a later period, going all the way back into the early BC eras that history can show us. So I try to stay with time frames where there's actual historical figure that people can connect with and do the research on.
No, that'll be great. I'd be very interested. So we're going to see Alexander the Great as well in there?
Actually, Alexander the Great will be the first chapter of the second book. But
cool.
you'll see names throughout history that you recognize. King Idomeneus of Crete, who was mentioned in the Trojan War and the Odyssey and the Iliad. Pharaoh, I was with Pharaoh Akhenaten. I was Benaiah with King Solomon. So I mean, I have a lot of names in there that you can connect with throughout history. I was a pharaoh. I was with other pharaohs. I talk about that. I was King Yudhishthira of India during the time of the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita. So I talk about that, and that's my first chapter. It's going to be a wow chapter because I talk about flying vimanas, flying machines.
Wow.
Yeah. So it should be an interesting book for a lot of people. But throughout it, I talk about how all of us can connect with these past lives. And so I have all this information that's interwoven within all this information about past lives and how we can all benefit and be better served by connecting with these past lives.
Yeah, and you do that with the Intuitive Warrior very well with your first book. It's you're real short to the point, just like the opening. I don't ever read the opening. It's usually like 5 pages. Most people do. Yours was a quick page. So right then you just like, yes, I agree with this guy, and you interweave your stories into common day life, and you.
Yeah. So I bring in what's happening today with my lives in the past, I was Ananda, a personal assistant with Buddha, Siddhartha, for 25 years. So I have a lot of insights, of what I learned from him that apply to today. And I tie in how Jesus actually went to the Himalayas and studied some of the information from Buddha. So it's going to be fascinating work.
Yeah, and to you guys out there that are listening to this, it makes perfect sense to me, researching this knowledge and reincarnation and past lives, that a 24-year Navy SEAL that has reached the heights such as Michael Jaco, that in past lives he had such incredible lives, and this life is just an extension of that, and he was reincarnated here in America to possibly change the world with his teachings and with the knowledge that he has. And what better guy, I think personally, than Michael Jaco, someone that's been a SEAL that could also talk to people such as ourselves, but is also high up there and was in the military.
Oh, that's nice of you to say that. No, thanks a lot.
Thank you. And if you want to check out his his teach. He has blog posts on michaeljaco.com where he talks about a lot of these past lives. So please check that out. And what's next for you before we go, Michael Jaco? What's next?
Well, I have one last chapter of this book that I'm working on, and I'll just go right into the next one. I'm working with another author that's interested in writing about. She does romance novels, but she does a lot of research, and she wants to write a romance novel about Navy SEALs. So she lives near here in Sedona, so I'm gonna meet with her soon. So a lot of interesting stuff going on. I still do the security work. I still go out and help protect government officials, keep them safe in these war zones. So that's still going on.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense that, people like that would want to hire the best out there, and you would be doing that to help protect them. So that's completely great that you're doing that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, that's it for today, Gnostic Warrior Radio. If you want to see more episodes, please visit GnosticWarrior.com. It was a pleasure to have you on the line today, Michael Jaco. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. Take care.
And yeah, we'll talk later. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Confusion, freedom waiting near. The sound, spirit horses, hoof beats in the sky. Snow, blood and ashes, and dreams too strong
to die.
Fathers and children, creatures young and grown, called by mighty drumming of sacred hooves on stone. The sun